So hi everyone, we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Folks trickle in, that's fine. You obviously all know us, but I'm Rachel Bello from Instructional Development and
Joanna from Instructional Development as well.
Yep, and we're here today to talk a little bit about rubrics, hopefully answer many of the questions or any confusion you might have about working with rubrics. So what we wanted to do to get started was ask you for some information to help guide us through our presentation. So what do you find most challenging about grading? What do you find most challenging about trying to use a rubric, or throw out some responses?
Or even with working without a rubric,
Right.
the part you like the least.
Yep. We'll give you about 5 minutes to unload that. So.
Bigger problem for my courses is the subjective judgment.
Yeah.
People complain too subjective.
How come you gave this person this many points versus me who got this? And they both feel like they made the same point well.
Okay.
And since you don't like to use computer typer, it can be handwritten things difficult to read. Handwritten things difficult.
It's a fun challenge for 2015.
So in the writing assignments that I give, I find that I make the same comments over and over. So I literally have a Word document that I cut and paste like phrases that I would give them as feedback. So I go into that document and I pop them in, and then I have them do it through Save Assign, the comments. But if there was a way, I suppose I could just upload all of my notes as generalized feedback to explain their scores. But I was hoping that the rubric could kind of do that for me.
Okay, so explaining scores sounds like a whole other problem too.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm cutting and pasting my comments.
Yeah, so your feedback feels repetitive even for you, and then explaining the scores, like why do I have to do, why is this point versus this point, right?
And making it easy to define, the middle range, usually because that's where the feedback gets inserted when they're making a common mistake or they went off track in a similar way.
And for me, it's efficiency. I keep track of scores in Microsoft Excel, and I keep track of what I would write repetitively in phrases that I store in Word, and everything's everywhere, and getting it together to discuss with the students takes time.
Anything else? Any other challenges, or maybe some, feedback that you've gotten from your students about grading that maybe something wasn't clear enough, or maybe they're missing, you're not connecting when you provide feedback? Do you have anything that your students have ever said about grading or what their confusion might be?
For like an assignment where everyone always trips at the same spot.
Yep.
Where you think you described it just right, but then everybody forgets to include this one piece, or they go off track with describing something. That's another sort of
Common, yeah.
And you're like, how many times have I revised these directions? How come it's not clear?
That's also something that we hear, so I'm gonna write that down.
Expectations.
I also hear that for students, it's hard to see the feedback through Save Assign. So I've been telling them that they go in the grade book, pull down the little tab where the grade is, and view a test, and then they can see my comments.
It's a little different for them on My Grades.
Okay.
They essentially go to the My Grades page, and then they just click on the name of the assignment, and that brings them to that screen you see with like the document and the thing on the right.
My grades. Okay.
So believe it or not, all of these can be addressed by using rubrics, and using rubrics specifically for the assignment versus your discipline. They're all different. It's not just a cookie cutter approach to anything. It's not, yes, it's a giant box we fill in, so technically it's a box, but other than that, it can be customized to address all of these things based on the assignment needs for your class and to meet your course goals. So.
Okay. So the real or official definition of a rubric is shown on the screen. It's a scoring guide used to evaluate the quality of students' constructive responses, and then commonly they're used for written work, oral presentations, other projects. Other is a big umbrella. Really, they can be used for anything that has multiple facets to it, or multiple outcomes attached to students' performance on the assignment.
We've had instructors that also devise a rubric for self-and peer assessment, and then the students use the rubric, which also is a similar rubric to what they're going to be evaluated on individually for either their writing submission or their virtual project, and then the students use that as part of grading. So it's really carried out, the criteria is really carried out throughout the assignment, and the students really get familiarized with what the expectations are for the whole project. So searching for where it's at.
That's right. So the grading process is really for two people here. It's for the faculty member and the students. So sort of some why are they useful to each. We kind of touched on some of them already. But the big thing for rubrics, and some of these actually kind of go across the board, and the biggest one is communicating expectations. Because the way a rubric's put together is it has very clear pieces of the assignment, what the outcomes of the assignments map to, that the students can then see, sort of middle ground, where is it that I need to reach for full credit, and then where are the pieces in between that I could potentially fall into if I don't want, in lower grades. So like a 10 out of 10 is this, an 8 out of 10 is this, a 6 out of 10 is this, and it helps them strive towards a higher grade.
So for example, Jen, as you mentioned, you find yourself feeling like you're having the same comments or explaining why they didn't achieve the highest points that were available for that component of the assignment. So what a rubric helps to do is it helps provide that gradient of how those points are feeding. Hi, come on in, welcome. How those points are feeding into each other. So if that, one specific component of the assignment, maybe it's the overall structure of the paper, for example, or overall structure of the project, that can be, it crosses over some layers. So they did it really, really, really well. It's close to perfect, or there's some things that you could cite, and those point deductions are a lot. So the student can see, oh, well, this is what I plan to do with my assignment, but oh, that's still not enough. So then it shows them how they can, pursue other changes to accumulate more points for the assignment and get closer to the goal that you need them to be at.
And I think we've been just showing you what a rubric looks like in the air.
Right.
So I'm going to jump to the next slide because it shows what a rubric actually looks like. So for those of you who haven't even seen a rubric before, it's essentially a table. It's all the hand motions to make a little more sense now. So these criteria are where the Word document full of feedback that you always put in. This is where those types of things live. So if you've ever seen like satisfactory, marginal, those types of ratings, those are called levels of achievement, and those go along the top of your rubric table. And then along the left, you put your outcomes. So maybe the student will use proper grammar. Boom, how do you define different levels of accomplishing proper grammar? Several errors, minimal errors, no grammatical errors. No grammatical errors means you get the full 9 points, whereas if you fall on the lower scale, you would say that's the reason you're falling in this particular criteria for this particular piece of the project.
Well, for example, if a student needed to demonstrate a certain concept or skill, this would be the highest level of achievement. They definitely demonstrated it with 0 exceptions. It was, close to flawless. Then maybe there was just still something missing that, in your professional opinion, they needed to work on or wasn't there. You can provide an explanation of what that might look like, and that would show them the gray area. And then also demonstrated it but lacked these key principles or pieces, then that would be here, and that would, derive the points.
And then the farther right, they fall in the category range here. The higher the points they're going to get, the better they're doing. And also the sort of over to the left, which is kind of tough to read with the little box, but there's really 4 pieces to a rubric. The learning outcomes, which go here, which are the pieces of the assignment. The levels of achievement, which determine how many, what's the levels of acceptance, essentially, how well they're doing. The criteria, which get degree down per outcome, where you see, how well do they do for this one, this one, this one, this one. And then the points percentages. There's 2 types of rubrics. Depending on how you do your grading, you can do points or percentages. Points are a little simpler to learn at first because it's just addition. So you can say, like, they got 17 points here, adding up that math myself, 10, 5, and 5, and it would add up to 20. But you could do percentage based where the whole thing's 100 points, and this is worth 30% of the grade, this is worth 20% of the 100, and then this is worth 50%. So the math is not the most fun part, but once you figured out the math, there's just the points in percentage distribution or where they land at each point.
Has anyone used rubrics that you feel like maybe you just didn't really get at what you're trying to get out of the assignment for the students, or maybe you had trouble figuring out or deciphering what the criteria needs to be? Does anyone have any? Yes.
The problem is not for us on the professor's side, and we can always figure out what the point and give to that. And the problem is when I show the rubrics to the student every time, and students are looking for another point in the comment and why you give me 15.
That would be your criteria. So what determines something is not, what, if your assignment's out of 100, what determines that it's an 85 for you? What are some factors? Like think of any assignment that you have or any project that you have that the students would receive 100 if they did absolutely everything perfect.
Yeah.
Why would you give them an 85? What would be missing? What are some of the things?
Yeah, the truth, and they
So
want
that would be the criteria.
yeah, should let me, they do not figure out by themselves,
Right.
otherwise
Yeah.
they can get 100%.
Yeah.
And they want me to give explanation and why you get 80% something. Now this is time consuming.
Yeah.
But that would help minimize that. So for example, I've done it 100 times as a student. If, I've been given a project to do as a student, and then I assemble it the way the best way I know how, and then I go back to the rubric right before I submit, and I look through my hands and say, oh, look, I did that really well, thank God. And then I go through, and then I'm like, oh my God, I've got that whole piece, I didn't even put that in there. So right off the bat, you would have deducted 15 points off my assignment, and I didn't even know, but the rubric helped to clarify, well, I included the table, but I didn't include, 6 pieces of this, and my
Yeah.
grammar wasn't right, or whatever.
Or even simple
So-
things like, paper is, using proper citations throughout. Proper, if you have a length requirement, that can be part of rubric as well. And that can be like checkers for the student that say, oh, maybe I missed the boat on this and I need to rethink the scope of my paper because it's supposed to be a longer thing.
So if your comment would normally be, I see that you provided some citations, but I know that you attempted to do them, but you didn't really back it up with a reputable resource, that would be the criteria. Citations are present in the document, but they're not from reputable resources. So that would be a criteria to establish some point deduction. Does that make sense? Okay.
Now let's look at a real one.
Yeah, the generic.
So this is a real one we borrowed in our ed class. And this is similar thing, you do your outcomes along the left-hand side. You've got your level of achievement, the points in this one are all filled in. And here are all the individual criteria that people meet for each of the outcomes. So the first one over there, the top row we'll look at is convey mood and emotion through color.
Talk about subjective, behind the subjective, right?
The grading art, essentially. So the beginner level of achievement would be worth 1 point, and that meant they used one color and showed up to explore color theory. Moving down one more, an apprentice level, which gets them 2 points, means for this piece of the assignment they used 3 or more colors for an effective design. Moving forward a little more, skills for 3 points, which means chose color scheme carefully and expressed color in relation to interpreting mood and emotions. And then mastering it, meaning 4 points or full credit for this particular outcome. They use sophisticated color schemes and use color in relation to interpreting mood and emotions. And then in this box over here, you type in whichever one they got. So if it's 4, because they're not, you type it in, or write it in this box, depending on how you use rubric. And you just continue to go down row by row, and then you add up the number, and then grades at the bottom.
So for example, this particular assignment, full credit 16 points. So that's how that grade would be derived.
So this is for specific assignment.
This
Yes.
is specific one. Yeah.
So I really learned from this, and what I have done is this: after each assignment, I give kind of summary and what is my marking grading scheme. But actually, is
This is this.
yeah,
You
this
could
is
break down the scheme,
Sure,
components
yeah.
of the scheme.
And the key to being able to back up how you graded the student is in the criteria in these white boxes, because you've broken down, here's the 4 major pieces of the assignment in each row. Here's how you could have fallen, 4 general categories, and describing them. So when you say, here's where you landed, there's built-in feedback as to why you landed in that range and why you lost a point.
And this is such a great example because you're talking about qualitative,
Subject.
Right,
you're talking
right.
about qualitative information and you're expressing it in quantitative and
Exactly.
Because
ways.
it's very easy to say, was this there, was it not? But if you have to tie some quantitative values to something so subjective, then it still can be done. And then it really does become, well, is it there or is it not? So from the faculty perspective, the guesswork is out of that. So regardless of the student, regardless of who's doing it, project is in front of you, the paper is in front of you, and then going through your rubric, you're essentially using all of your own comments that you've said in the past to evaluate a piece. Yes, this was there, no, this was not, and then so on and so forth.
John?
Yeah, I added to this, and Generally speaking, every course syllabus have rubrics, but those rubrics is not sufficient.
It's not just about distribution, it's
Right.
about
Should be
describing.
individual assignment.
Right.
This is, yes.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it is some work up front to develop your rubrics, but once you get them workable and you use it the first time, great. And then you can make tweaks because if students do, point out something or you think, oh, I want to make sure this is included, you can always tweak it along the way. But once you get the general setup together, it's a much easier to grade papers and especially bigger things because you know what you're looking for. Which you know what you're looking for, but this helps keep you on track, I think, a lot easier.
And them too.
You just said you can tweak it along the way, and yet if I make a rubric that goes to an assignment, and I give the ones that give me the assignment, and they have that rubric, I can't tweak.
I mean, like from course, like semester to semester.
all right.
Yeah.
So
No, you wouldn't want to change it
Right,
between
you
two
know,
students, no.
because otherwise I'm just saying, well, I decided
No.
that points would work different, right?
Yeah, no.
So for example, project to project, it could be different assignment to assignment, but maybe you have a pretty global discussion for rubrics. So throughout your course, any discussion is subjective to these criteria. Did they post once? Did they reply twice? Did they include a resource? Did they evoke some further questioning from their peers? So on and so forth. So that's pretty standard for discussion, regardless of topic. But then you can also make a project rubric that is specific to that project and then tweak it for a similar project later on.
Usually the best way to start using rubrics is to start with something big, like your final projects and your bigger things.
More components for
More components to work with. And then once you've got one down, I think smaller ones are a little easier to do.
The other great way to think about it too, because sometimes, you sit in front of this blank table and you're thinking, oh my God, where am I even gonna begin saying this? Kind of put on that hat of being in the class where you're or online, telling your students what you're looking for in the assignment. So sure, in the syllabus, it says we have a final project due, and here's what % of your grade that is, but here's what makes this project successful. So if you're in front of your class and you're like, so what I'm looking for is this, but what I really don't want is this. Those are your criteria. It's coming out of your mouth. You just need to figure out how to align that according to
And then,
just the organization.
and then along with the directions you provide them, you give them the rubric you're going to grade them with.
Yep.
So it's very transparent. They can see exactly how they can do, get the 16 or get the full credit, and they see what would not be 16. So the biggest thing to encourage them is do your whole project, make sure you're informed with this, and then before you submit to me, before you come to class, grade yourself. Take a look at this, make sure you're doing all these things. You should do well.
What feedback usually becomes after this is it's not redundant in the conceptual form, like you were saying, where you're repeating, oh my God, I said that 16 times already. That's all already here, so it becomes a checkbox. They can use it as a reference, but what your feedback becomes is the examples of where the points deduction. So maybe you chose, skilled for this particular criteria. Your feedback, which usually sits over in a notes section over here, would then become on page 54, you said this, or used image, to demonstrate why you deducted the points. So that's usually what the feedback becomes, which is
And
not
it's much
redundant when
shorter.
you're in, yeah.
Much shorter, much more targeted, because the rubric, so to speak, for you.
So then, is the idea that you upload the rubric if you're collecting your assignments, you say assignment, you upload it for each student?
You can attach it.
The next slide.
Yeah, you can attach it to if you're using Safe Assign or an assignment location in My Courses, you can just attach it. So where they click on the assignment, they see the due date and the instructions, they can also see that as a rubric that expands out to them. Oh, this is what he or she's gonna be using to evaluate my work.
Sorry, I'm gonna make this more readable here.
Looks much better downstairs, though. We put it on the projector, colors get a little off.
I have a question. Common practically, you attach the rubrics to assignment before the.
You want
Before you start
to,
grading.
yeah, you want to show them what they're up against for grading.
The problem to me is, I'm not sure this because to me is if I detail something and this is encouraged to think about the creative way I wanted to then think about that. That this is how to compromise. This is in my mind, and I really like the idea and give very specific criteria. And after the assignment, more comfortable to me and say why I give you. First, this is every course have rubrics for assignment, the general framework. Then this is detail. This is so whether I give them before assignment or after assignment when I graded, this is my question in my mind now.
You give it before.
Before.
Because it works, it enhances the directions you've given them, because they can shape what they produce based on this criteria that you've developed. So they can see, they can ask themselves the question, did I really use sophisticated color schemes and in relation to interpreting movement emotions? No, yes, or did it really fall into one of these? So they can shape, and it will change what you get from students, because they can see at a more granular level where they are, what they need to strive for.
So for instance, some folks, some students will, just naturally they're inclined to submit maybe images or graphs, and some students aren't, they'd rather explain it. If you have that built into your rubric, they use visual aids, or they use another representation of materials to explain their points, they back up their resources. Maybe I'm not visually inclined, and that would trigger me, and maybe, yeah, that is a great idea, I should include a chart to explain what I'm saying, that would be perfect, or yeah, I should go look at this organization and pull it in. So it helps them, it gives them more tools to elevate the performance that they're doing. Does that make sense?
But it's part of the directions, and that's why you can give it to them upfront.
Do you want to go through them, my course?
Yeah. So this is just a screenshot of, you can also have rubrics, there's a tool built into my courses that can develop the same type of thing, where it's the table where you put your outcomes over on the left, and then your levels of achievement, and then you can type in your criteria over in the boxes here and put in your point distribution. So this whole tool we've explained, which can be done on paper. So you can do it in a Word document, use them on paper, or you can do both. You can have them in my courses. So if students submit things online, like assignments, like Save the Sign, discussions, journals, anything that's able to be graded in my courses and have a rubric attached to it that you can use to actually an interactive rubric. So when you go to the grading screen, you can actually click, and then it adds up based on whatever you just clicked. So if the student was competent at formatting, it clicks, and then it actually chooses that as the 2 points, and it adds it all up at the end.
And it does give you an opportunity to provide more granular feedback if you wanted to cite those examples if you want to, or you don't have to. Depends on how detailed the criteria you're including in your rubric is.
Yeah, so if you click on this rubric criteria, this is where they landed, it opens up a little box. If you wanted to provide more detail as to why you chose this particular criteria, you can. And you can provide overall feedback at the end, type it in if you wanted to as well. Really, just to sort of let you know, it is also available in my courses to do all that stuff. So if you have things in my courses, they can be there. And then also, making it available to students ahead of time. When they go look at the assignment or whatever it is, the rubric shows up right there. They can click View Rubric and see it ahead of time.
And then when you grade it, it will show also the rubric that you used for grading. So it will show your feedback and comments, but it will also highlight the fields you've clicked. So it says, oh yeah, she did assign me 3 points, and he did say this, or oh yeah, this is where I landed on the criteria. So it's efficient, it's very efficient.
Very efficient.
So we have a handout, right? Because we always have a handout. Here's the resources. The first one is a link to EdTech Teacher. This is actually a really nice spot for any rubric that you could possibly imagine that uses collaborative technologies like wikis or blogs, or anything really that's online. So they have a slew of rubrics to choose from that are available for tweaking. But you could download them, get an idea, and go, hey, I really wanted to use a blog in this assignment, or I really wanted to see how this would work out. I don't even know how to begin. As far as including their use of the technology. So that website has some pre-made rubrics that you can use to say, oh yeah, that is what I'm after, or oh, that's a little bit off, but that's mostly what I want. You can take it, tweak it, so on and so forth. Rubrics in my courses, the link that's available there, they have a really nice page set up. It's for Blackboard, obviously, that has video tutorials about how to do exactly what Andrew was just discussing, how to set it up, guides you through the clicks, talks to you about why you should, choose point ranges or percentages, and the options that best suit your needs. Rubriclibrary.com is another web resource that has rubrics by discipline. So it had chemistry, biology, math, science, all those things. It kind of breaks them down by discipline, and they've been put there by other teachers in similar disciplines. So you can go and look for your area. And then the best resource, the last one, it's us. So we are available all the time, either email, by phone for consultation. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to sit down and kind of pick apart your directions with you and see how that would work. On the back, we've included a blank rubric. If you wanted to go ahead and try to pick apart one of your assignments and kind of fill in your criteria, you can copy this as many times as you want, feel free. Or if you wanted to fill this out and you have some questions about it, reach out and we're happy to walk you through the rest of it.
Yeah, we have this room for another half an hour.
Yeah.
So if you want to chat about rubrics, you don't have to leave the last half for discussion for playing with rubrics.
Or
If you want to see an example, we can try to find one pulled up.
Yeah, so use us for the last half hour, so
Are
sure.
rubrics in various file formats? In other words, are Blackboard's rubrics only proprietary to Blackboard? Other things couldn't be imported without them being in Blackboard's?
Blackboard's pretty just Blackboard.
Yeah. Those are, you build them specifically in the system. You can move them between course sites, which is nice, but once you build it in Blackboard, you can print it out if you want, but if you're not going to use it in my courses,
But their
you can make it in like a
underlying
table in Word.
code, the underlying code is proprietary.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We do it all the time when we make rubrics. In my courses, we copy criteria that we really like from something we've written elsewhere or something, a similar assignment that we found along the lines. We copy the criteria and we just paste. So you can copy paste.
Bring the ideas in.
Yeah,
You can-
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just comment. What I learned the most today is beauty, because we are traditionally we just use one rubrics for all assignment.
Right.
But this is a mistake actually. It's because people are complaining and not clear. Impossible for one rubrics for every assignment. And I learned and have to attach it to every assignment detail.
Mhm.
This is save my time to give disputable comments and why I give it the same to say.
It's mutually beneficial. They'll do
Yeah.
something better, they get a better grade, and you won't have to deal with
Yeah.
as many one-on-ones.
And the other thing too is the common size of a rubric. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but the go-to size is either a 3x3 or a 4x4 rubric. So usually, if you have that many criteria options listed and broken down in a rubric, it produces a really nice, well-rounded submission on the student side. So,
Exception being things like capstone projects.
Right.
Those could have like 10 rows.
unfortunately.
So, yeah, unfortunately, but so.
So I'm just trying to think through an example. So if you're grading on 100 points, then with a 3x3, so you end up each cell has a range of points.
Well, that's what you get to decide, because this is an even distribution, so
Right.
all these are one. But you could do, it's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 here, but maybe this particular criteria is more important. So it could be 2, 4, 6, 8, because it's worth more than grammar might not be as important as getting to the point. So a particular row can be worth more.
And my favorite is ranges because nothing they're more often than not, nothing's black and white, right? So it's not 1 or 2, it might be 1.5. Oh, they kind of got it, they didn't do as bad as this, but they did do
Yeah, I
this.
wondering how much
So
you
you
said.
can ranges.
You can also choose ranges.
Yeah.
So you can say you can get from 21 to 30.
If your box is, your range is 20 points, and you click on it, how does the rubric automatically know what point down within that? And then what the student could say, well, so what
I'll be honest.
distinguishes a 12 from an 18? It's all one.
I'll be honest,
You're-
those are really big ranges because there's not a lot of criteria because we wanted that to be cute on the slide.
Yeah, no, but I'm just thinking, like, when I was
Yeah.
out of 100 points, and even if I have a 4x4 matrix, there's still gonna be a fair amount of range.
You can, that's where you have the additional comments beyond.
Yep.
So they're able to be lesser, especially if they need the higher end of like 8 to 14, if they get the 14. You don't really have to put much comment there because they embody a B. But if you did have like a 10 or 11, you can put more specifically why.
Or break it down further. So if you know that it's not 3 gray areas that you're looking for one particular criteria, there's nothing that says you can't have 4 things with 5 columns to really break out that point distribution.
And it's not to say that over time, if you find that a lot of students are landing in the middle, you just add more description to the criteria. So if everybody keeps forgetting to do a 4th citation, you say, student may have missed 1 citation as describing that criteria, and then, when the student's looking, they're like, oh, I did that.
Or what makes the difference between a 12 and 18 for
So
you,
it's-
that's your extra column that you can add.
Yeah, I get that, I just feel like students are gonna nitpick over that, if it's not,
Less than the
everyone
points.
isn't specified.
Lessen the points.
Less than the
Because they can't, because it really doesn't matter. If it turns into out of 10, you just scale it up to out of 100 anyway at the end of the day. So if to them, it looks like less,
Right.
There's actually less disgruntled. there's actually less disagreement because they really have no room to argue, like, oh, wow, it's black and white. So,
I think that
Numbers.
that's-
I mean, I know in the syllabus that, the course I'm teaching now, is some of it set up as ranges and some as direct points, and depending on what the assignment was or whatever. And the range really gives me a little bit of academic freedom,
Right.
to say, you know, it's gobbledygook. I know it's all there, but it's a little here, a little here, a little there. So that it would be somewhere in 0 to 7. That may be a 3, or you know.
Don't you find then that
or
students really could nitpick over that? So
And I think that the rubrics have stopped I don't understand, the drop, and I don't understand why this thing's 60.
right,
You know, or
There's less
whatever.
dispute.
Yeah, they tend not to.
Because you've already broken down
Right.
why several pieces are up to snuff.
And what happens is once they look at it, they look at your comment, and then they go back and see it, they see what you saw. They may not agree with the point exactly 1 or 2, but then again, there's a little bit of that, it's academic freedom in that, it's the same idea as it, I mean, could you even read it, could you get from A to B with it, or whatever, and so I found with the ranges, it's almost easier for me to grade because there is the range, because I can feel like, these are all 3 levels, these 3 are level 1 on this set, but this one's higher than this one, and this one's higher than that one, and so the ranges seem to be really a little bit better.
And
But
this-
I mean,
and
I'm
this
still
might-
learning, I'm not sure.
And this would, the single point ranges, or not ranges rather, where it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, might be a little better for something low stakes, like an online discussion, where you don't necessarily spend as much time grading a discussion as you do a paper. So you just like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it is what it is. But then the more complex the assignment is, like I said, the ranges make sense.
And again, like I mentioned earlier with the self-compare assessment, if you give them you could either modify it to make it more granular for your purposes of the final project, but you could give them the rubric that they're gonna have to use for the assignment anyway, and then they can use that to really, tighten up their work with each other and kind of learn that way. And then that way, if they haven't given their peer something, but yet they're grading it, they're like, oh, I didn't even put that in mind. They have that reflective moment, which is a really good opportunity for them to better their graph problem.
For peer review, you've got a built-in tool for it.
Yep.
They can't go off the rails. You just peer review each other with the rubric I'm gonna use.
So to
Cleans up you a little bit.
to get out the topics a little bit, and so to go in my courses, if I were to teach a straight online course, the rubrics are in the syllabus. Every single assignment has a rubric that right with it. Explain the assignment, here's your rubric, explain the assignment, here's the rubric. So, do I need to go into, how do I explain it? How would I go in to set that up? Like,
To attach it as an actual grading tool.
There's a rubrics area, and you can kind of stockpile them. So if you already have 5 rubrics that you're using in your course, for example, you can click on rubrics, and then to say create a rubric, you just transfer, copy paste your criteria, add how many columns and rows you need, articulate your points and what you need, and then you save it, and then that's for that particular assignment number 1. And then assignment number 2 has another one, so you stockpile however many you need, and then when you're actually adding the assignments to the course site, the student, you can just add it in as an attachment like you would for an email. You just stick it to it.
We of course can help you with it, but the second link on that
Yeah.
doc has an explanation of how the tool works, and this is what it looks like. So if you build it in Word, you do have to re-replicate it in my courses because you kind of have to copy paste the pieces, and you build it, which you kind of see, this is my courses. So you say, okay, I don't want it to say novice, I want it to say something else, and I want to change organization to proper citations, and then you fill in your criteria and your points the same way you would in the table, but this, when you hit submit, becomes a tool you can actually work with and attach to things. And when you go to grade whatever it is in my courses, there'll be a button to access your rubric.
And you don't have to start from scratch. So we talked about tweaking before. So if you do have one established in my courses, you can just copy it and then make tweaks to the copy, and every time you just save it as whatever the next assignment is. It's under user friendly.
Under course tools,
Under
rubrics.
course tools.
Yep.
The one beside that, course tools, rubrics, and it pops up and you can create one and it'll just save it.
And then it just like it's a particular side.
And you're not, and if you do have some sort of, some people have consistent writing assignments. I know there's some courses that do a weekly, 1-page reflection. You can attach a rubric, the same rubric to multiple assignments as well. So if you want to use the same rubric to grade similar work every week, usually on an ongoing basis, you can do that as well. Or if it's something that they submit periodically that's the same format, you can reuse the same rubric and just have one that's attached to this assignment and this assignment and this assignment.
Do you have any ideas right now about like, oh, I wanted to try this project or assignment, but I'm really not sure how it would work out? What's kind of, what are we generating here for ideas for what you have in your class already? Is there something you're not using Rubric for, that you're thinking about, considering? Yes, no? Bob's always got something in the works.
So this course I'm teaching now is the first time we have rubrics in the syllabi for each particular assignment we were asked, and I thought they're working to do that. So it's kind of a work in progress to see what's how it's gonna go, and whatever. I mean, they have certainly been recently enough been a student, and things have been graded via rubrics, and I've used them, but not probably prior to the assignment, if that makes sense. Like I've used them when I corrected them, just because we were learning to use them, I guess. We didn't understand it. So then, basically what we were doing initially was going on, looking for probably, website of this sort, that combined discipline. We were just picking up the rubric lotteries to see which ones there were, and whether they would fit the particular assignment. So it's still a work in progress, and we really don't know, but it's almost become the standard with the college teaching that every course, every assignment has a rubric. So I think it's a learning curve for us as faculty, as well as for the students. But
It's kind of like a contract, right?
Yeah.
So if you do this, you will get this many points. If you don't, then this is what you're going to get the points. So it's kind of like a contract for the assignment. That's a neat way to think about it.
In my 100 level course, where particularly this semester, where there are seniors who are trying, just want an easy 100 level course, get out the door. I have
It's not going to happen in yours.
I have brilliant freshmen who are completely dedicated to try to succeed in school. I have seniors who just want to get out the door. I have seniors who want to be valedictorian. So it's all over the place in terms of their motivation.
We need to standardize that.
As well as their skills, So I'm asking them to do weekly essays where I pose questions based out of the chapters, the material that we've studied week by week. And I've given them basic rules. If I write 1,000 words, this is going to be great. If I write 100 words, use as many words as you need to answer the question fully, effectively, and comprehensively. Mm-hmm. But this will be more helpful because I can start without limiting their creativity and their responsiveness and their ability to do background study if they want, to give them what I really liked that arts rubric where you're taking qualitative information, but you were quantitatively defining it without taking away the beauty of the qualitative information. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I'd be striving for these written assignments, directed to students who are in completely varying places in their
majors and
all that
focuses.
quality is based on their prior knowledge or their prior experience and what they've learned in other classes or elsewhere. So if they can use color theory or schemes, then you can see where that's coming from. You can see what chapter that's coming from, or what activity you did in class and where that's coming from. Demonstrated this, illustrated this. You can really get to that.
And like specifically colors and emotions, just those two words, like, okay, there's 100 million colors and there's several emotions, and what colors will you use to demonstrate which emotions you choose? Like that's a good way of taking something qualitative and making it quantifiable. Is just those two particular words were actually pretty perfect.
This is I'm struggling, and it is how rubrics on one side is very good to give a student a guideline. You have to do this, but on the other hand, I really encourage them to creative way, and I don't tell you and why you use the color background, and now you say
This was just art. This was the assignment was to do something with color and emotion. But with you, if it's like, oh, they came in and they did a poster board and they didn't have to, or they came in dressed up and did a skit and they didn't have to, and they went above and beyond. You, of course, are the teacher, so if you're like, they need 120, I don't care what the rubric says, they're not going to complain because you gave them extra points. And so it's not to put a cap on it, it's to put a definition of what a perfect is, if they decide to go beyond that.
So the other thing too, my question is, so when you're looking at your student projects, what are some things that trigger you to say, this is really well done, versus, this is still a work in progress? What are some of those things? Can you explain to me?
Let's put my difficulty is case analysis.
Yep.
Business case analysis. If I tell you what kind of good point? Well, everybody can figure it out, all right? And the point is when you go to business, real business case, or actually is the paper business, you wanted to find something, and really I didn't tell you, but you find that this is a good point. And otherwise, if I tell you, try to find this, then of course everybody can find it. So this
But that's
kind of
good though.
thing.
So
That's good because you're teaching them good skills for
Yeah,
future
that's
classes
right.
and future
Right.
assignments.
Yeah.
Oh, I found 3 resources because that's a good way to back up my argument.
rationalized argument using X amount of resources, rationalized argument citing examples from da-da-da-da-da, conveyed opinion based on da-da-da. Those are some of the things that you would put in as your criteria, without stifling creativity.
But then it's like,
Are
where did they
you
go?
worried, are you worried that they won't take initiative? They'll just,
Exactly.
they'll,
They follow this.
Oh, they'll just say, oh, I need
Here's the
3.
formula, here's the formula to an A. I see what you're saying.
This is, yeah,
But is that a bad thing?
I know.
You're not telling them how to
I
do it,
know.
where to go to do it, what the
Exactly.
topic is.
Yeah.
They took a topic, they took what they've learned, and they used this to sort of construct it.
Yeah.
Because when they get in the real world,
True.
they don't want to have no rubric.
True.
So they now have the skills they needed to do it. And it was, okay, a good argument is backed up by a good source from somewhere reputable like a database, you know, and that's going to give me higher on the rubric.
You're reinforcing or compounding those
Yeah.
skills that you want them to be able to do and replicate in the professional world. So it's just good practices. You're reinforcing good practices.
Yeah,
You
it's
want
more
someone-
how to conduct an assignment, not how to do it.
Yeah. That way, this would never happen. But a student can't say, oh my God, I never learned any good practices from Shohan's class. I just went out there and nobody needs resources. They would never say that. But this is a good way to just practice that technique, right?
True. This is at least provided the bottom line, you have to do this.
Exactly,
and this.
exactly.
Yeah.
So how can initiate or have creative way to thinking, and this is I still have to figure out.
And it could be that the rubric can be accompanied by directions that say, in short, sort of what the rubric's about, and then you can have a paragraph that says, but do not feel like you are restricted here.
Sure.
This is the bottom, as you said, this is the bottom line of what I'm requiring for this assignment, but students have gone beyond this, you can try to do something in a different direction. Come to me if you have a different idea,
Feel free to wow me.
feel free to allow me, yeah. Or if you, like I know, a lot of the courses I've seen will do, you can do a paper, and here's the rubric for the paper and the structure of what I want. If you have a different idea for something other than a paper, let me know,
Presentation and project.
and we'll work on it. But wouldn't you rather have them come to you with a creative idea than have to tell the same thing to 20 people because it wasn't on a rubric?
yeah, you can tell them, the rubric is a rubric, but this course is not about making rubrics. The rubric is a map, but the map is not the place we're going. The map only shows us the place that we want you to go. So don't be confused about making rubrics as the point of this course.
Yeah.
It's just the map. Now you, the student, have to drive to the end point. You get in the car.
Here's a map to guarantee success, a baseline for success, but feel free to go above and beyond, and let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Does that help?
If you have a particular assignment, bring it in, we'll talk about it.
Anything else? But we never try to take the whole time, because we know we have to get back and forth in classes, so, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach
Thank you
out.
so much.
Sure.
Thanks for coming.